Thank you very much. Right now, I'm joined by my colleague, Councillor Michelle Wu. She's our at-large city councillor. And other city councillors will be trickling in as they're coming in from other parts of the city. One of my councillors, the vice chair of this committee, Councillor Kim Janey, unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, and she provided a letter for me to read, noting that she, stating directly, please be advised that I am unable to attend this evening's hearing regarding the redevelopment of the Charlestown Bunker Hill development due to prior commitment in her district. As vice chair of Housing Committee, I know that's a very important issue to the city, and I look forward to hearing the outcome of today's hearing. Please read this letter into the public record, which I have done. So I want to remind you that this is a public hearing. I know a lot of people have called it a meeting. This is what the difference basically is, that we're going to have testimony and questions, but also that this will be live streamed on Facebook Live. It will be rebroadcast on Comcast 8 and RCN 82, on Verizon 1964, and online, and also available on YouTube. Please silence your cell phones and other devices. I know we tend to be very electronically connected. I probably need to do mine as well. But I just want to make sure that we do that so we don't interrupt the hearing. There will be an opportunity for the public to give testimony tonight, and we would appreciate it if you sign in to testify. If you haven't signed in yet, it's okay. If you feel like testifying at another point and want to sign in, you can sign in at the back of the room. Because of the subject of this hearing and how impactful it will be on not only all of Charlestown, but specifically those who are living in the Boston and the BHA housing, we're going to have the BHA residents testify first if they have any questions or if they have any comments. But all testimony is welcome. All opinions are welcome as long as they're expressed respectfully. And understanding that we are our community and that we are going into a major transition. Again, if you're unable to testify, or if you think of something later that you would have liked to have said on the record, you can email that to us, and that will be entered into the record. And please feel free to submit in written comments. When you do come to testify, please state your name, your residence, if you're a Charlestown resident, what brings you here, if you're with a nonprofit. And we're going to ask folks right now, because we have a really good crowd, which is, again, I'm not surprised. Charlestown is one of the best neighborhood in Boston. I didn't say that on the record. But I'm not surprised by that. So we're going to ask folks to keep the testimony to 2 minutes, okay? We've just been joined by my other colleague, City Councilor at Large, Ayanna Presley. Good evening. And so we have, I just want to be clear that unfortunately due to a conflict, the BPDA, the Boston Planning and Development Agency, could not be here. I had submitted some previous questions to them and have some of their answers with me. And so when relevant, if the questions come up from the audience, I'll be sure to pull from their testimony. And that'll also be made available for folks to look at later on, okay? For now, I guess we will get started, unless you had any opening comments? No. Okay. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I want us to get going, so I hate to even butt in, but I just wanted to say I'm really thankful to my colleague for her leadership on the issue of housing in general, but particularly in her district. Every council meeting, Councillor Edwards has really been speaking up and talking about this idea of who are we building the city for, who should be able to stay here and participate in Boston and have a place to live. So I'm here to support Councillor Edwards in her charge for that. And I did want to just apologize to everyone because we have another family commitment tonight on the other side of the city, so we'll be leaving in a little bit, but thanks for indulging this situation for the time being.
Just to kick off the hearing, I just wanted to note that this is not only important to Charlestown, but it's important to the entire city of Boston, as we are going to be redeveloping several different developments throughout the city. We could be a model, not only for Boston, but New England, if not the nation. And I really am excited to see us come together. The Bunker Hill housing development has 1,100 deeply affordable housing units, making it the largest public housing development in New England. And many of these units are in a physical condition that necessitates their replacement. I want to go on record and be very, very clear. In no way is this a hearing about whether we should be doing this or not. We are going to do this. This is not a question for that. I want to also be very clear that a lot of today's hearing is not about what potentially will be coming down the pipeline, but specifically about how we got here, why we're not currently in the middle of development, the process that we have gone through, the lessons that we have learned, and what we as a community can look forward to in terms of process in the future. And we'll have folks who are part of that process speak directly to us. If we have time, and if there's enough, I will happily open up to more direct questions to the folks who are speaking, but for right now, myself, I've had several questions submitted in advance. I will direct them and then open up, okay? We're going to go ahead and start the testimonies. So we have Tiara. And the folks from the CRA who would like to come and testify with her.
Good evening. My name is Tiara Murphy, and I'm the president of the Charlestown Resident Alliance. I have lived here for 3 years. I'm currently in school at the Bunker Hill Community College studying early child care education. I became involved in my community because, like all parents, we want the best for our children. They deserve the best that life has to offer, including housing, education, better programs, and mutual respect. This is going to be a $1 billion deal. So in partnership with the future developer, we want to fund and create a program so that all of our partnership with the future developer, we want to fund and create a program so that all of our children will be reading at a 3rd grade level by 3rd grade, closing the word gap between wealthy and low-income families. Our children deserve to live like any other child who does not receive a low-income or a daycare voucher. Our children should not be limited because they live in a development. They should be empowered. To us, this is the key to a better future for the next generation. We want it to be funded out of the $1 billion. Who knows? Maybe we can get the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to kick in. The CRA is family-friendly. The Alliance is a group formed for mutual benefit. We work together as a team with the BHA. As we now have over 41,000 families on our BHA wait list, our #1 issue is a guarantee of the 1,110 deeply affordable units. As current residents of the Bunker Hill development will have the right to return, not all will choose to. It is vital that all 1,110 units be preserved, as we will have the right, as we will represent the current and future tenants. We care about the families in shelters and on the BHA waiting list. Our vision of a partnership is CRA will be a full partner with any developer, which includes consensus decision-making, meaning everyone is in agreement. Mutual respect between the CRA, the BHA, and the developer. Management company policies and procedures done in partnership. Like the developer and BHA, CRA needs professional consultants. Resident service programs chosen by residents of the BHA. There has been talk of a supposed community consensus plan for One Charlestown. I suspect that some folks will talk about it tonight. I am not sure how consensus was defined, but there can't be a community consensus plan without the participation of the prime stakeholders, which are the public housing residents whose homes are at stake and whose lives will be deeply impacted. Our voices The voices of the public housing community also must be heard, valued, and accepted into any plan before it is characterized as a consensus plan. Finally, I would like to thank all of the city councilors for listening tonight. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be heard. On behalf of the CRA and the residents, this is going to be a $1 billion deal. It will rebuild our homes, provide opportunity for our children, and place public housing residents at the table when decisions are being made. Let's do this. Let's work together. Let's win awards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take testimony from, I have a Zulma Gual. Zulma? Thank you, Zulma.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zulma Gual, and I've been living in Charlestown for 3 years now. I have 2 children that were placed with me, and I find that the redevelopment process that was supposed to be happening and hasn't happened yet. We've been going to meetings, and they tell me one story, then they tell me a different story. I think that I'm looking at a better future for these 2 kids, and it's our safety that I'm more concerned about. And living in the situation that we are right now, I don't even feel safe living here anymore. But it's the only thing I have right now, and it's what I have for the future for these 2 kids. And I'm not complaining about BHA because BHA has supported me throughout the 3 years that I've been here. Everything I've asked for has been done, and I'm just looking for a better place for these 2 kids. Thank you.
Nancy Martinez and Betsy Rodriguez. See? Anybody who speaks Spanish as a primary language, we have someone who's here to interpret for you. So feel free to come to the mic and we will interpret. Nancy, were you? Nancy?
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Betsy Rodríguez, soy residente de Boston Housing también. Mi pregunta es, que yo tengo a mi esposo handicap, okay. ¿Cuáles serían los beneficios de la nueva modernización de los proyectos? Como ciudadana, y la comodidad para mi esposo, que es handicap y pues tiene mucha dificultad para moverse, y ahora mismo tengo muchos problemas donde yo vivo, porque los residentes mismos me tienen los pasillos bloqueándome con coches, y él no puede con la silla de ruedas mucho moverse. A ver, y pues a ver cuáles serían la nueva modernización de los proyectos.
My name is Betsy Rodriguez. I am also a resident of the Boston Housing Projects here in Charlestown. My question, what benefits are we going to see as residents when this modernization takes place? I'm particularly concerned because my husband is handicapped. Currently, he has a lot of issues with mobility, being in a wheelchair, and so I'd like to know what accommodations are going to be made for him when this modernization takes place.
Thank you. Are there other folks from the BHA Housing that would like to testify? Oh, Betsy. Yes, come. Betty Carrington.
Good evening, Charlestown. My name is Betty Carrington, and I'm the ex-president of the Charlestown Tenant Task Force. And I'm happy to be here this evening because this shows me that somebody's still thinking about us. So, I've been living in Charlestown since, I believe it was 94. So I've been here for a long time. And I'm one of those people that believe that they have to do something about our development. And since the government no longer wants to support us with the 70% that we need to survive, they have to do something else. And Mr. Corcoran is one of those people that signed up to take on this huge job, and I was one of those people that voted for him. And I'm no longer the president of the Tenant Task Force over there, but I'm a community activist, and I still to this day stand by Joe Corcoran. Thank you.
Do we have any other testimony from the residents from the BHA before we move on to other testimony? Okay. Up next, we have Bill McGonigal, from the administrator from the Boston Housing Authority.
Should I go here or here?
Whatever you feel comfortable.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Tara. Yeah. Good evening. I have a written statement I'd like to put into the record, then I'll be happy to answer questions. Madam Chair and members of the council, I am Bill McGonigal. I'm the administrator of the Boston Housing Authority. Let me say at the outset that I am pleased to be here today, particularly with so many of our Bunker Hill development residents, including members of the Housing Development's outstanding resident organization, the Charlestown Resident Alliance. As you may know, Bunker Hill is the largest public housing development in New England, with 1,100 very low-income families who have an average income of $17,000 per year. The development sits on a 24-acre site and is, in fact, one of the most diverse census tracts in the city of Boston, perhaps one of the most diverse census tracts in the United States of America. It provides a home to many African Americans, Hispanics, white, Asians, and Native Americans who collectively speak approximately 15 different languages. More than 1,000 children under the ages of 17 reside there, as well as 238 elderly residents. The goal of this unique and unprecedented redevelopment effort has been to create decent, modern, affordable housing in the heart of Charlestown, first and foremost for the families currently living at the site and for future generations of low-income Bostonians. We at the BHA have been, are now, and will continue to be deeply committed to replacing all 1,110 deeply affordable units for our current and future residents of this proposed newly redeveloped mixed-income community. Please let me briefly recap the rationale and the reasons why we began this massive undertaking and move forward with the residents of Bunker Hill with a request for redevelopment proposals. The Bunker Hill development was built in the late 1930s and opened for occupancy on June 20th, 1941. The development is obviously showing signs of its age and is very much in need of major capital investments and a major redevelopment undertaking. Regrettably, as we all know, and as has been well documented, the federal government has for decades rapidly been retreating from adequate operational and capital funds for public housing programs nationally. While contemplating strategies to deal with this growing federal withdrawal of financial support for public housing and how we might creatively respond to that, we at the BHA have begun to focus on one of the assets that we do have here in Boston. Specifically, much of our public housing is situated on very valuable land. The Bunker Hill housing development in Charlestown is certainly one of those sites. The value of the land that many of our communities are on and the potential to leverage the value as well as leveraging market forces to help preserve for the long term the affordable public housing at Bunker Hill and other communities in Boston is key. Therefore, what we have been exploring here and in other communities in Boston is the concept that by adding market rate housing and therefore creating a mixed income community, we might generate enough revenue to support the preservation of the deeply affordable homes. This is and will be challenging. At the same time, we recognize that in order to do that, we need to create a diverse mixed income community that fits well within the broader Charlestown neighborhood and is an asset to this historic community. Over the last several years, I and my staff have attended scores of public meetings, spoken with hundreds of residents, neighbors, elected officials, and stakeholders. The one thing that everyone agrees upon here in Charlestown is that the status quo at Bunker Hill is simply not acceptable. Everyone supports redeveloping the site and delivering a high-quality, mixed-income community for our residents and the broader community. In closing, I remain hopeful that we can all find the right balance of density and the right proposal to achieve this goal. Thank you all, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
So I just wanted to run through some questions.
Certainly.
I'm curious, right, could you just tell me how much the budget is annually for the upkeep of the BHA housing project here at Bunker Hill?
It's about, I think, with heating and electrical, I think it's roughly about $7 million a year.
And is that's fully funded through the city of Boston?
No,
or?
no, no, no.
Okay.
No, that is funded, Counselor, through the federal government, through the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Okay. And how much, if any, do city funds go into the upkeep or maintenance of the BHA?
The public housing program in Boston and the public housing program nationally is funded through the federal government, through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, on an annual basis, pretty much to a great degree at the whim of Congress and the President on an annual basis.
Would you say it's due to the lack of the funding for maintenance that a lot of the deterioration is?
Yeah, I can provide reams of documentation that will substantiate that the federal government over the past couple of decades, and I would not want to get partisan, and I would suggest that the Democratic and Republican administrations in Washington have been far less than generous and have provided significantly insufficient operational and capital funds for public housing authorities all over the country.
So the only way to have this redone and brought up to livable standards is through a private market?
I regrettably came to that conclusion several years ago after ongoing annual underfunding and quite frankly challenged my staff, Kate Bennett and my outstanding redevelopment staff, to come up with a concept that might be able to provide the private capital needed to preserve our public housing in certain communities, as I said in my statement, where we could leverage the value of the land and the market forces to generate that capital.
So would you characterize this as the privatization of public housing?
I would not.
Okay.
I would characterize it as a public-private partnership.
To add another P word, permanently? Is this a permanent partnership that?
Permanent, what's permanent? What we're hoping to do is to...
and I'm only getting at that because, and I don't mean to cut you off, the only reason why I'm asking about this is because there has been characterizations that we are either selling or giving.
Oh, goodness no.
Right,
goodness
and so
no.
if you could address, yes.
Yes, no, we will, one of the things that we are insisting upon in this effort is that the VHA continues to own the land.
Okay, thank you.
That the development sits on that I cited as being so valuable. The BHA, and we would lease it to the development company for 99 years. So the BHA would continue to own the land and would have significant influence on any decisions that were made over 99 years.
So there would be an accountability then?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just going to shift a little bit, and before I do that, I wanted to also recognize the presence of my other colleague, and City Councilor at Large, Anissa Sabi-George, who has also joined us. Thank you. Really appreciate them coming out. So let's just talk specifically about process and how we got where we are right now. And if you could just walk us through there was at some point a selection for the developer, right? For the yes. So how did that happen, and what was that process?
The developer selection process here for Bunker Hill was done in precisely the same way that we have selected developers in 10 or 12 housing developments throughout the city of Boston over the past 30 or 35 years. The Development Selection Committee, well, we send out an RFP, obviously, and various folks development companies will submit their proposals, and the BHA sets up a selection committee that is made up of BHA residents and BHA staff. I would add that, as far as I know, we are the only housing authority in the country that includes residents in the selection process. So we have committees that read the proposals, frequently interview the folks that have submitted, usually on more than one occasion. I believe for this development selection process, all of the submittals folks were interviewed twice. And then the committee scores the various criteria and makes a recommendation to me, and I make a decision.
The actual drafting of the RFP and the criteria that goes into that, who's at the table for that process?
We have pretty standard
RFP.
Yeah, it's
okay.
pretty. I mean, it's tweaked a little bit here and there depending upon the development, but it's a pretty standard document.
So in this, after the scoring of the submitted proposals, you made the selection for Concord?
I took the recommendation of the committee, yes, and made the selection.
Okay. And what was it specifically about their proposal that scored them so high?
The one thing, first of all, it was a very close competition. POA submitted the Preservation of Affordable Housing and Related Beal, and there was one other one too, Trinity, I think. And it was a very close competition. The single item in the proposal that I was most impressed with was the Corcoran SunCal commitment to real economic diversity. Several of the other proposals had mixed income communities, but they separated, quite frankly, the poor folks from the rich folks in different buildings, and that is not, from my perspective, economic integration. I want, at the end of the day, to have housing that the quality of the housing is the same for some of our existing residents or from somebody that's on Social Security disability that might be living next door to a lawyer. I don't want you to be able to tell one bit of difference between the quality of the individual housings. Thank you. In New York, for a while, they actually had in mixed income housing a separate door for the poor folks that they used to call the poor door, which is an outrageous notion, and that was not all that long ago. So that was the one single thing that struck me as significantly important in the Corcoran SunCal proposal.
And in this original proposal, how many units were proposed?
I forget precisely. It was not 1,100. And when
deeply affordable.
900 and something. I
Okay.
can't remember. I can get you that, Counselor, if you want it. We went back and said, absolutely not. We're going to have one-for-one replacement, that I am drawing the line in the sand on that. I will not lose one deeply affordable unit in this redevelopment or any other redevelopment.
So, and I appreciate your comments, especially about the committees and BHA residents being at the table. How would you describe their engagement? How would you describe that BHA's engagement with the residents in this process?
I think I have a great relationship with the residents of this development and public housing developments throughout the city. I make an effort to work very closely with them. I've tried to be very supportive of them. They have a legal counsel, independent legal counsel, which I think is important, and my friend Jay Rose was willing to come out here and represent them at my request, quite frankly. I've paid for one of their staff members that's working with them full-time, so I've made every effort to be as supportive as possible of this tenant organization, and will continue to do so.
So at some point, the selection was made and planning began to occur, and we'll walk through or talk with some of that planning with Cochran Jennison. But just to get to what recently happened, at some point there was a breakdown in this Cochran Jennison and SunCal.
Yeah.
When did you find out that SunCal was no longer going to be financing or be part of this?
I'm not sure of the exact date, late fall, I think, November-ish sometime.
And what was your reaction?
Surprise.
Were you concerned about how this would go through, or would,
I was very, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I was concerned.
I was surprised
very
and-
concerned,
yeah.
in fact, yes.
So what tell us about the next steps and what you were trying to do to make sure that this process or this deal could continue?
Well, we had some additional discussions with the Corcoran companies, and they indicated, and we mutually agreed that they would search for another partner. And ultimately, they were successful to convince the Leggett folks to join in this partnership, and they have submitted that proposal to us. We are in the process of reviewing that with the Charlestown Resident Alliance, and I suspect sometime in probably mid-May, we'll make a final determination as to whether or not we think this is a viable partnership.
And just to be clear about who the "we" is, who will make that determination?
It'll be the BHA coupled with the Charlestown Resident Alliance.
Will make the ultimate decision.
Yes.
Yes. And in general, well, thank you for that timeline. That was extremely helpful. If there is not a designation by then, what do you expect to happen with the timeline to get this done?
I prefer to think positively at this point.
Okay.
There's been lots of fits and starts with this undertaking. I knew going into it, quite frankly, that it wasn't going to be easy, and quite frankly, I suspected that there would be some fits and starts because this has never been done before. There is no roadmap to follow for this kind of public-private partnership, but I'm hopeful that ultimately the BHA and the CRA will be able to move forward, but if not, we'll send out another RFP and search for another developer.
And before I turn over the microphone, but I had a quick question I wanted to reiterate. I think it was Ms. Rodriguez's question that I thought was more fitting for you about
Sure.
her husband having disabilities. And so if you could speak to the BHA
Yeah,
commitment.
we will absolutely have, in this redeveloped community, hopefully when we're finished, we will have, I believe, somewhere in the area of 10% wheelchair accessible handicapped units. So we will comply with all of the ADA requirements, and there'll be brand spanking new, fully accessible units for Ms. Rodriguez and her husband, would be my hope and my wish.
And did you have anything? Did you have any? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to turn the mic over. No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So picking up on the line of questioning from Councilor Edwards, I did just want to ask, could you share, is that according, will there be certain percentages allocated not only to those individuals living with disabilities, but also the elderly? Because I know that's a big part of this population as well. So in addition to making sure that the units are affordable, but that they that we are thinking of the subsets within that larger community. So
Yes.
How many units will be allocated for the elderly?
The current proposal has an elderly-only building in it. I think it's somewhere 180-ish, about 180 building that's exclusively for folks 62 and over, Counselor.
Okay. Thank you.
And I suspect there'll be other elderly folks living in you know, the non-specific elderly. One of the things we've looked at is the number of elderly folks that are in that community now, and ensured that we are, in fact, replacing sufficient to house all of the elderly folks that are in that community.
Okay. And so during the rehab, where will residents be living?
Yep, we've actually gotten pretty good at that relocation stuff. We've been relocating families for major redevelopments now since the Mission Main redevelopment about 30 years ago. And we offer folks a combination of a relocation to another BHA public housing development or a Section 8 certificate, their choice, whatever they opt for. We will work with a housing relocation consultant, Housing Opportunities Unlimited, that has worked successfully with us at many of our redevelopment efforts and are very, very good at dealing with the difficult, sometimes emotionally difficult, of relocating folks.
To that
Sure.
point,
Yeah.
could you tell me, does this happen, is this in phases? Is it sequenced?
Phases, yes,
Okay.
Council, be phases.
Okay.
So a project of this size, we are 4 or 5 phases it will take, I suspect. I mean, for example, the only other development of this size that we've tackled, and it's actually a bit smaller, is the old colony housing development, and we just finished up 2 phases, and we're hoping to break ground on phase 3 sometime before the end of this year, but there'll be another phase. So that was 4 phases. This will be at least 4, perhaps 5 phases, 10, 12 years from start to finish.
Okay. And so the reason why I was asking that question is that, you know, certainly because the federal government has abandoned us, so we have no choice but to look to creative public-private partnerships like this. This housing has been woefully neglected.
Yep.
And we all agree that education is the equalizer, but family is the stabilizer, and our families are destabilized when they're not living in quality housing. So it's long overdue, and the investment is much needed. But in that temporary relocation, families are disconnected from support systems and structures, and perhaps their accessibility to childcare or their ability to get to their job. You know, all of these things are compromised. So, so how are there wraparound interventions and supports? I'm glad that it's sequenced, but how do we make sure that families are prepared for what this impact will be in the totality of their life?
The folks from Housing Opportunities Unlimited are quite good at that. Okay. And all of those things are taken into consideration. And again, the family is relocated at a housing development or move with a voucher to a development or a community or an apartment of their choice. We don't say, you got to go here. So they are affirmatively choosing where they want to go. And are assisted in the relocation and any other of their needs. The moving costs are all paid for and will be paid for. And I would add that all of the folks that are relocated, all of them have an absolute written, legally documented right to return to the new community when refurbished.
Curious, what's the average years of residency? Do you have any sense? How long folks have been living in this community? That's a good question. The average stay.
Yeah, in public housing or the Bunker Hill?
No, Bunker Hill specifically.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Well, my point being, valued members of the community, and so pleased that there are guarantees that they will have the right to return.
Yes, and I could say this, the move-out rates in public housing in Boston have decreased significantly in recent years, the turnover, because the private market, even folks that are living in public housing that have had the opportunity and the initiative to increase their incomes are finding the private market in moving upward and onward very difficult. So folks are staying longer.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Councilor.
I had a quick question, actually. Do you know what the average housing voucher is?
It depends on bedroom size, and it's
Say for a
determined.
two-bedroom?
I don't know, 1,800-ish. I could get you the precise number. It can vary year to year based on HUD's fair market rates. The vouchers that we have out on the street now, we're having about a 60%, I think, success rate with folks finding apartments, which is not optimal by any.
In Boston?
In Greater Boston.
Greater Boston,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
I think that was one of the biggest concerns I
Yeah.
had for folks who will take the voucher is that, is it really a ticket out of Boston? Because the way the private market has gone so rocket high that even $1,800
Yeah.
for a two-bedroom is.
May not be good enough, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's my biggest concern about the displacement too,
Yep.
and where they're going to go.
You know, in response to that, folks, again, have the right to move to another public housing development. If they have a voucher and they can't find an apartment, they're not going to get tossed. They'll have, you know, the option to move to a development if that's what they wish.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Oh, yeah, of course.
Apologize for being late. On that process of moving residents temporarily or the relocation, what's the time that a family has to plan that move? From the day they're notified to the day you're expecting the apartment vacated?
It's, you know, it's really a very extensive, I should have brought Housing Opportunities Unlimited here. They reach out to the family very, very early in the process. It's months before, I don't know what the precise, but it's months before they are relocated to begin the process and to begin the discussions, to begin the possible unique needs that family might have. And, you know, I think, quite frankly, if you ask around the city in the 10 or 12 developments where we've relocated folks, I don't get a lot of complaints about relocation. They don't get to me, so that tells me, I think, and when I'm out in the communities, I hear that they're doing a pretty good job on the relocation stuff. So.
And then what about the relationship with any of the students that are relocated and their ability to stay at their school?
We work with the family and with the school system.
And so they're allowed to remain and stay at their...
If that can be worked out, or there's something else suitably worked out, but it's clearly something that is of importance and is taken into consideration in the relocation of the family.
So if a child is relocated outside of the school zone, are they then forced to re-register for a school local to their temporary housing?
That's a scenario that could happen.
That's something that would be of particular concern to me.
It should be.
Through
yeah.
that relocation
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, but it is something we're aware of and something we try to mitigate and minimize.
I would wonder if there's any opportunity to protect those students through McKinney-Vento regulation, because they are being displaced.
I would love to have some more detailed discussions with you about that. Let's see if we can pursue something
That'd
like
be
that.
great.
I think it's a very good suggestion.
I appreciate that.
Yep,
Thank you.
Certainly.
Sure. Councilor Edwards asked me to explain, just McKinney, my name's Anissa Asaibi George. I apologize again for being late. I chair the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery. One of the pieces that I focus quite a bit on as a former BPS teacher is our students who are experiencing homelessness. And I would venture to say that this is a homeless experience when we're displacing families and students. And through McKinney-Vento, which is federal legislation, students who are experiencing homelessness are able to remain in their school of their community school, their school of origin. And they are given transportation to make that happen, to allow that to happen. So I'd like to see if there's a way that we could discuss that.
I'd love to pursue that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and so we're going to switch and have Cochran Jennison come up.
Yep.
If you'll stay. And
Yes,
then,
I'll
of
stay for
course.
the entire
Thank you.
hearing, Council.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
yep,
very
yep.
much. And so what we'll do too is I'll go through the questions because it's already a little after 7, and then open it up and have all have Cochran Jennison and the BHA sit here so that the audience, if you have a directed question for them, you can ask them too, okay? This will just, so hopefully you've written down some of the questions I've already asked, so we don't want to be too repetitive either. If you can just go ahead and set your name.
Okay.
And come.
Council Edwards and members of the Boston City Council, I'm just going to read a little statement here. I'm Joe Cochran, president of Cochran Jennison Associates. Let me start by saying the model for the RFP response Mr. McGonigal mentioned is Harbor Point. It was developed in the late 80s by my father's company. My father was a great proponent of mixed-income housing, and in fact, he started his company in 1971 to focus upon building mixed-income communities. I feel like I've grown up in the affordable housing business long before I started actually working in it. At Harbor Point, residents of various incomes live side by side.
I think I'm sorry, some people are having a little hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry.
If you can just move the...
Outside voice? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have one of those. Okay. Let's see. At Harbor Point, residents of various incomes live side by side. As Bill mentioned, there are no low-income buildings and no market-rate buildings. Everyone has the same units, same finishes, and same rules. In addition, the residents have shared oversight of the management as partners. This was a vision I had in mind in crafting the response to the RFP. The market-rate units cross-subsidize the affordable units, which allows a property to be self-sustaining. Because a property needs to always attract market-rate residents, it needs to be well-maintained at all times. From this standpoint, the property behaves just like any other market-rate apartment property, which includes a substantial affordable component.
I'm sorry, if people are saying they can't hear you. Maybe it's the microphone.
Really?
I mean, mine's pretty loud.
I'm sorry about that.
Here we go.
There we go. I'm not used to this. Sorry. Okay. Because the property needs to always attract market-rate residents, it needs to be well-maintained at all times. From this standpoint, the property behaves just like any market-rate apartment property, which includes a substantial affordable component, and why I believe we can attract private capital to the development in Charlestown. To answer an earlier question, the submission in 2015 proposed 2,400 units. I propose 180 units to be located off-site. The BHA and the residents on the selection committee liked the concept, but had a goal of a one-for-one replacement on-site. Remember, our program relies on creating market-rate units. So to bring those 180 units back on site, we had to add a corresponding number of market-rate units to the site plan. This increased the density. Prior to formal submission to the city, the development team attended over 16 meetings with the residents of the Charlestown development, and then had a series of meetings with the greater Charlestown community. The meetings were with individuals and small groups as well. There was a great interest at that time in home ownership, and we informed people we were talking to that the only way to accommodate an ownership component was with height, and that height would likely happen to be near the bridge in the later phases. The lower levels of the buildings needed to accommodate the rental program. The higher levels would be condominium units. After we formally submitted the plans to the BPDA, the community reacted quite negatively to the high buildings, and we've eliminated those high-rise buildings. Presently, One Charlestown is in the middle of an Article 80 large project review. We filed an expanded notification form in September 2016. A series of formal public hearings were held, and as well many smaller meetings with individuals and small groups. One Charlestown has received a scoping determination prepared by the BPDA in response to public comments from the community and various city departments. The next step is to prepare a draft project impact report. The transition of development partners has delayed the preparation of this DPIR. The project team is now in a deliberative procurement process conducted by the BHA. If our proposed reconstituted partnership is approved, we look forward to preparing the DPIR and re-engaging with the CRA and the greater Charlestown community. This is a transformative project. Nothing of this size and scope is easy. But we want to walk hand in hand with the Charlestown Resident Alliance, the great Charlestown community, and the elected officials to do something extraordinary here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to kind of launch into a series of questions. I would, so just to make sure, I don't know if everyone else heard this, the original RFP was about 2,400 units with 180 off-site. That was rejected ultimately and said we wanted a one-for-one replacement of the 1,110 units. And in order to do that, the density had to go up. So is that explaining the reason why it went from 2,400 to 3,200 units?
Partly, and also, you know, when we went out before we even submitted and talked to a lot of people, as we always do, and there was a lot of desire to have some home ownership at the property too. So adding the home ownership as well led to that 3,200 unit number that we first submitted with.
So, okay, so between ownership and then having the
Correct.
The units on, or doing the
Correct.
one-for-one?
And I mean, frankly, we probably got, you know, as developers, when we start playing around with plans, you know, things get a little higher, and we kind of misread the acceptance of that, you know, and but the high-rise buildings are gone completely. And we've been, even though we've been a little, haven't been in the community recently, I think we've made it clear to just about everyone that we have no high-rise buildings in the plan right now.
You had a partner originally, SunCal.
Yeah.
When did they leave?
Well, SunCal is actually still in the organizational strategy. SunCal notified us in the early fall, due to some business concerns unrelated to this project whatsoever, that they thought it would be a good idea if we went and found another partner to replace them because they couldn't really continue on. So we began a search, and you know, before I came to Mr. McGonigal, I wanted to make sure I had something to say, and so we had searched a lot and talked to a lot of different potential development partners, and we settled on Leggett McCall.
So they didn't leave because were they concerned that this couldn't happen, that they couldn't make their profit margin?
No, it was more, you know, they're a West Coast company. They had a lot of big projects out in the West Coast. They had one particular in Los Angeles that kind of ran into some issues. And I think they probably just got a little overextended on a lot of the projects they had.
And so you told Mr. McGonigal when exactly they left in the fall?
Well, probably around, we went and had a meeting sometime in late fall, November. Okay. And I brought him up to speed about the latest developments, and you know, he's very good about it. And I told him what the process was to find someone, and I was still very confident even then that this would be an attractive project to the private marketplace, and I still do.
So now you've you said you indicated that the person that you are asking them to consider or the company is Leggett McCall.
Yes.
How do you know them? How did you find them?
Well, we have an investment banking company working with us, and asked them to kind of introduce us to various other development partners, and through that, I met them through that process. I've known their work for years, but I honestly have never met any of the principals, although one of the guys used to work for my father's company years ago. So we had that kind of connection.
And in this partnership, what role would they play? Would they be the lead? Would you be the lead?
Yeah. I mean, we will work out all those details as we move through it. But you know, we're kind of the local on-the-ground people, and they're very good with the very complicated financial analysis and planning, and combining with the construction expertise to help make the project go. And also to be a very financially strong partner that can attract other capital to the project just by their presence. You know, the big, you know, it was mentioned earlier, this is $1 billion project by several people.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to attract a lot of money, and, you know, that money likes to see an expert team in place when they invest in a project. And they bring that kind of strength to the project. Frankly, the BHA will do their analysis, but I think Leggett McCall is actually a stronger partner than SunCal was, frankly. They're local, they're based right here. I think they're going to come and say a few words and kind of toot their own horn in a minute, but I think we have a great team going forward.
That's to be considered.
Yes.
To be considered.
Considered by the BHA,
designated,
exactly.
To be considered
Yeah,
by the BHA
right.
and the CRA. And one of the concerns that folks have raised is about the community and the wraparound services that residents have, health services, Tufts Medical. There's been a lot of institutional services that have been built around this community. Do you have a commitment to build on those?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, Bill mentioned the relocation. That's the first. And, you know, when we have a construction start date, the relocation process itself will start 12 to 9 months before that, starting to interview residents and find out what their needs are and kind of figure out what has to be done for the transition. And on an ongoing basis, you know, once occupancy, supportive services are a key component to making the whole thing work. And we hope to work with the CRA and have a robust community service program developed on the property.
You mentioned the CRA. How is your relationship with them right now?
Well, I think it's fair to say it has its ups and downs. You know, it's a very complicated project. We're getting to know each other a little better. And I think this delay is probably put a little more stress on it. You know, when you're actively moving forward, you have a lot of reasons to be meeting together because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And this little delay, it just kind of stalled that a little bit. But I think we'll get back on track with it.
So that's a commitment on your part?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, we're going to be partners with the residents, so it's going to be certainly going to be a commitment.
So part of what I have seen is that there's been talk of an alternative plan, consensus plan, as was mentioned. Have you looked at this plan? Have you? Yeah,
we've met several times with Cy, and he's met with our architectural team, our site planning team, and there's some good elements to the plan.
It's a what?
There's some good elements to the plan.
Okay.
You know, I mean, obviously, I think the off-site relocation is a good idea to kind of reduce the density. That actually came out of the community process with the Article 80 process, frankly. But retaining the streets and working on some of those things, I think there's some things that we've taken a look at, and we'll see how they work in the plan itself as we're developing the new plan.
And your experience with this kind of, could you speak specifically to your experience, not the companies, but in doing these kind of?
Well, I mean, I've been in the working in this, and as I mentioned, my father's been in it for years. I mean, I've been exposed to Harbor Point and Kings Lynn and all kinds of developments that my father's done. And I've been in roles of asset management within that company. And I kind of know the business aspects of it. And I've got tremendous development experience on the market rate side as well, in various different kinds of development projects.
Is this the first project you're leading on?
Excuse me?
Is this the first project you're taking a leadership role on? And
No, I've taken leadership roles on other projects.
Which ones?
We've had projects in Somerville and Cambridge, and I was the lead on a project at Ocean Edge in Brewster when I was a very young guy, 1,000-unit project.
Okay. All right, I'm checking with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to ask about, so there's a retail component that's a part of this proposal, is that correct?
We have slated some retail, yes.
Okay. And it's no secret that I'm a big booster for
Yes.
restaurants specifically.
Yes, indeed.
But the reason why I'm asking about the retail space is I want to talk about jobs for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if it's best that you answer this or the chief speak to this, but for the construction, how many jobs are we talking about in the building? And I just
Oh.
want to make sure that we are prioritizing local residents
Yeah.
from this community,
Yeah.
if possible, that are on these job sites. And then secondly, what is the opportunity for permanent jobs? And that's why I'm asking about retail.
Oh, honestly, we haven't really got to that level of detail
Okay.
on it yet. I mean, we're still very much in the planning and finalization stage. But I think we want a retail component that is kind of service related to the community. I mean, not maybe, certainly not any big box retail or anything of that nature.
Okay.
But community size detail. But we haven't. We'll get to that. We're a long way from that. But we have, I think to have opportunities for residents and other, both the development and the greater Charlestown area with the retail is, we're all for that too.
So what are the guesstimates in terms of, since this is such a large-scale project, can you give some projections in terms of what sort of workforce, how many people we're talking about in order to build this?
Oh, I can't. I mean, we're going to be building it in phases, and so.
Maybe use as a metric previous projects. I know this is unprecedented in many ways.
Well,
but-
maybe if there's a construction project of 300 units, there might be 200 people working on it at any given time.
Excellent, okay.
Okay, something like that, and we're committed to community participation. It's a goal of the BHA. It's in the RFP. We've got to hire city residents, and we'll do that through a general contracting. We have right now Suffolk Construction, who's our pre-construction partner in this thing, and they have a tremendous dedication to that and to hiring people in the city.
Well, we appreciate that verbally expressed record. We appreciate that verbally expressed commitment.
Yes.
And certainly want to make sure that's being demonstrated, that local residents within this neighborhood are being prioritized, and that the workforce is representative of the diversity of the community as well.
Absolutely.
My other question is, could you speak to community benefits that might be a part of this proposal? And within the community benefits, I'm also wondering, is there proposed financial investment in terms of mitigation, since the population will grow considerably?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's all part of the Article 80 process and something that the IAG will work with the BPDA to tell us what it is that the community is expecting. We are replacing a lot of public housing too, which is a big community benefit, right?
Absolutely.
But I mean, I think there's things like, we're planning parks, and there's probably some road improvements that we can expect to have.
Is it unheard of to make financial investment to support the infrastructure of perhaps more public safety investment and sort of the infrastructure that will be needed to support a community that's going to grow
Yeah,
so
I
much
think
and have an increased density?
I think if you look at, mitigation agreements out of the Article 80 process, there's all those things that you mentioned that come out of it.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's something to be negotiated if we get to that point, when we get to that point, which will be, if we get to that point at the end of the year, that'd be terrific if we can get there.
Okay. So then my last question is, you mentioned home ownership. I just wanted to make sure that I understood correctly. Are there opportunities, because I'm always thinking about sort of this nagging income inequality and wealth gap.
Yeah.
So are the opportunities for equity in wealth building rent to own, or are these simply units that are just up for sale when you speak about home ownership?
Well, right now, we don't have any for sale. We kind of took that component out with the height, with the tall buildings initially. Right now, we don't have any rent-to-own component in it. It's a straight rental across the board as we conceive it now.
Is that something you might be open to?
We're certainly open to seeing how it works. I'm not familiar with rent-to-own programs personally. I've never done one, but if it, we could certainly something we're open to taking a look at.
Okay. All right, and then my last question is for Chief McGonigal. I'm so sorry, I just wanted to get clarity, Chief. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to get, oh, I'm over here. I apologize. I just wanted to get clarity. Will Housing Opportunities Unlimited also fund move-in costs? So, okay, so both move out and move in. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I know, you're ready to go, but I have
no.
a couple quick questions just to follow up. I forgot to ask, what were the expected profit margins of the original proposal?
You know, I don't think we had an expected profit margin on the original proposal.
You didn't expect to make a profit off of the
We
original?
did, but I don't think, I don't know what it was. I mean, we have to get a 6% return on cost in general.
Okay. So 6% of the total 1 billion is it estimated? Do you? Do you have?
I wasn't prepared to answer that, frankly. You know.
Do you would you be? Well, how about this? We'll commit to follow up.
And it changes, you know, from year to year too.
Right.
You know, it's driven by what the economy is allowing you to do too.
True, and the
So it's a
valuation
moving
of the
target.
land and things like
It's
that.
a moving target, yeah.
So, in this particular project, do you have a moving target range about what you're expecting to make?
Well, I'd rather not
Okay.
share that, actually.
All right. So in terms of if designated in May, according to Mr. McGonigal's timeline, if the designation were to happen, it'd be about mid-May. Yes. Yes. How soon after that, if you were designated with Leggett McCall, how soon after that would you expect the shovels to go into the dirt?
Well, we'd first have to prepare the DPIR, which might take several months, and then we have to get to the end of the Article 80 process itself. So I would guess if, you know, a year from this coming fall would be a good goal.
A year from this coming fall, so 2019.
Yeah.
Next fall, if everything is moving and
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go. I just wanted to also invite up Leggett McCall to come, and I just want to be clear, they are not designated as a partner in this project. The consideration, as has been testified to, will happen. Who will decide ultimately will be the CRA and the BHA as to whether they are designated or not. So they were invited because their name is out there, and they are asking for consideration. But I wanted that to be very clear that the ultimate decision will be with the BHA and the CRA. So if you will have a brief statement, but they will not be taking any questions either from myself or from the audience, because again, they are not an actual designated partner yet.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards and the City Council. My name is Eric Scheffels, and I'm the co-president of Leggett McCall Properties. As Councilor Edwards mentioned, we are not yet approved by the BHA as a selected developer, so we're going to keep our remarks both short and to the point without answering specifics about the project itself, because it's simply premature for us to do so. What I'd like to do today is really focus on three things for you. A little bit describing who we are. Secondly, describing why we want to get involved with this project. We've heard that this is going to be a very difficult project. It's a very large project, and I'd like to talk to you about why we see it as an opportunity. And lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we're doing at this juncture to address the items that Mr. McGonigal noted still remain outstanding prior to our being able to be ratified as an addition to the team. So first of all, who we are. Leggett McCall celebrated its 50th anniversary 2 years ago and is locally owned and operated. I mentioned that I'm the co-president of the firm. With me this evening is my co-partner, Mahmoud Malihi. Would you raise your hand? As well as Harry Nash, who I think Joe mentioned earlier actually worked with Corcoran Jennison some years ago. Mahmoud and I met in college and have worked together for 34 years at Leggett McCall, so we've been a fixture there for quite some time. Harry has constructed over 6,000 units of residential housing and would be the project executive that we would have working on this project in conjunction with Corcoran Jennison. A little bit about our firm. We do both fee-based project management for others, and we also invest for our own account. We do quite a bit of work for mission-driven nonprofits such as universities and healthcare systems. Our clients include Harvard, MIT, Partners Healthcare, Beth Israel Deaconess, MGH, Brigham and Women's, Northeastern, Tufts, etc. We've been involved with over $2 billion of residential projects since 2002. On an annual basis, we put about $1 billion worth of projects in place and have done so for the past dozen years. So the local experience, the large project experience, our experience with extraordinarily difficult both construction undertakings as well as community involvement, we believe qualifies us to become a partner with you in this undertaking. We have extensive experience with the BPDA as well as the architectural, engineering, and contracting community. In fact, we've just completed a process with BPDA and are breaking ground on a 600-unit complex near the Boston Medical Center as we speak. Next, I'll try to answer the question is, why do we want to be involved with this project? I think the CRA mentioned that this undertaking will be nearly $1 billion. This is an extremely complicated project. It needs to balance the needs of many different constituencies. We pride ourselves in undertaking large, complicated urban projects with diverse problems and needs of various constituent players. We need, first and foremost, and this has been made abundantly clear to us by the BHA, to satisfy the current occupants of the complex represented by the CRA, which we acknowledge come first and foremost. We share the vision of the original proposal of creating an economically and ethnically diverse community. That has, again, been made abundantly clear to us that will, in fact, be a component of this project. We also recognize that this will have a substantial impact on the neighbors and the neighborhoods, and that we need to talk to them. BHA, BPDA, and other various city constituencies have to be dealt with. And last and not least, whether we want to recognize it or not, the economic interests of investors that will be required to invest that $1 billion that the CRA mentioned. So in asking the questions as to profit margins or returns, the basic answer to that is we need to provide an economically viable project that will, in fact, attract $1 billion of capital to be invested over nearly a decade-long project. This delicate balancing act to define and deliver on what is possible is a challenge. Bill McGonigal spoke of the challenges we face in trying to marry these diverse interests into a viable project. It won't be easy, but these public-private enterprises are very likely to become more prominent in the future as a vehicle to finance the needs of housing agencies to either upgrade or replace dilapidated housing stocks. We believe that we have the creativity, experience, and vision to work in partnership with all of you to realize on the potential of our project. Now I'd like to speak maybe a little bit more personally about why it is that we want to do this. In our world, frankly, this is a dream come true. This is the ability to help redefine an entire neighborhood, to participate in creating a diverse community reflecting the makeup of the greater community at large and to replace an aging eyesore. My partners and I view this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be an active participant in creating a neighborhood and look forward to gaining your confidence and respect. Lastly, I'd like to speak about what we're doing at this juncture to address the items that Mr. McGonigal noted remain outstanding. The BHA, in consultation with the CRA, has asked us to address a number of issues associated with our qualifications and experience, our financial capability, our willingness to acknowledge and adhere to the requirements of the original RFP, and our vision of the project and for the project, including plans, budget, revenue and expense forecasts, and financing schemes. We have provided some, but not all of the information required of us. Most specifically, we have sought and been granted additional time to flesh out the specifics for our vision of the project, which includes addressing some of the issues that Joe Corcoran addressed here earlier that failed to meet the vision of the community at large. We look forward to working with the CRA and the BHA jointly in defining this new community. We are in the due diligence period. We have re-engaged the design and construction teams to provide substance around that vision. While we're not prepared to talk tonight, as this vision is nowhere near complete and will ultimately need to be reviewed not only by the BHA, but specifically by the CRA. That too has been made clear to us by the BHA. We understand this and are looking forward to this process. We're aware of the concerns expressed by the CRA and the community about a number of issues associated with the previous plan, including but not limited to height and density. We're working to address those issues and realize that whatever plan we come up with needs to meet the needs of all the players involved with the project. We appreciate your coming out tonight and hope that we will soon be before all of you, having formally been designated. We look forward to earning your confidence and respect as we work to improve your neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wanted to acknowledge our state representative, Dan Ryan, is here. So now we're going to move into the questions, and if we can just have Mr. McGonigal, Joe Cochran sit at the table here in case any questions are directed directly for them. And I'm just going to go into the order that we have pending. So we're going to really ask folks to keep your question or comment to the 1.5 minute kind of mark to make sure we can get through everyone. And I think we can if we do it that way. Just did some quick math. So the first person we have is Eric Philippi from 32 Mount Monument Street, or Ave, excuse me. Eric, if you can come forward. And we can just have you go to the... Oh. So what we'll have is we have a timekeeper who will raise a yellow sheet if there's a minute left to go, and then red means that time is up. So we'll just look to her, and then I think that's it. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was volunteered to do this.
Oh.
If you could actually remove this block in 3KT186, if you could just announce.
Oh, yeah. There's a car, sorry. License plate 3KT186. I think it's Toyota Corolla. Toyota Corolla 3KT186. It's blocking and it's going to get moved. Oh, okay. All right. So again, the 1.5 to 2 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Philippi.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to make a few comments. By rethinking Charlestown 1 idea, Charlestown has momentarily averted a tsunami. Why did the proposal of 2,400 units never get off the ground? No linkage is generally the explanation. And I think it's a very important topic that linkage be explained to all of us, because $18 billion went into the harbor area, Northport, and all of that went into a mostly white and business area, and $1 billion would solve many, many of our problems here in Charlestown. And going back to linkage, how are those decisions made? And I think our government people ought to help us with that decision. There is a solution that is worthy of consideration, and that has been aired probably about 2-3 weeks ago, and that deserves more attention. Sullivan Square is a huge problem for anybody that is trying to figure out how to make this all work. So we need a lot of explanation on how we can pull this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I might go ahead and have a couple other people testify, and if there's some questions in there that you want to address.
I'll stay here as long as you
Okay.
want me.
Terry Kennedy and Patricia Boucher. No? Okay. So Terry Kennedy, and then Mary, if you want to get behind him.
First of all, thank you for doing this. This is really important for our community. My name is Terry Kennedy. I'm the Executive Director of the Kennedy Center. As most of you know, the Kennedy Center has been serving Charlestown folks, BHA residents, all of Charlestown since 1964. This project is very important to the town, to the Kennedy Center. Some of the challenges that we look at with this is, at least in the original plans, there was going to be, our community center was going to be torn down as part of the first phase. So that becomes a real challenge for us as far as how do we deal with that. We signed on early as far as supporting this project because we do believe that it's important for the residents of BHA, it's important for Charlestown. We've been working with Joe Corcoran and his team to talk about the problems. And they've been very open to dealing with us and talking about how can we fix some of these things. Parking becomes another issue. Some of the original plans, we lose some of our parking. BHA has been very supportive in helping us with parking, but if we don't get our teachers a place to park in town, they can't teach kids. So just in general, we are. I wanted to say, we really appreciate the effort that's going into this. We know it's a challenging process, and we want to be here for the long run to also, some of the questions around social services. We've been here for 54 years. We'll be here for another 54 years, and we serve people from infants to seniors. So we got a lot of that covered. All right, thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, councilors, for coming tonight. Many of you have seen my sister here. She's usually the mouth and the voice. I hate public speaking, but she had appendicitis yesterday, so she's getting them removed right now. So, my name is Mary Boucher. I'm a former resident of BHA, 54-year resident of Charlestown, and I currently live at Charles Newtown. I don't think there's anyone here that doesn't want the BHA redeveloped, so we can all agree on that. The height and the density of the original plan was unacceptable to the Charlestown community, especially to the residents of Newtown. We would never see the sun after 10 a.m. because of the proposed height of the building. In addition to the number of units on the RFP, it was excessive. The town cannot handle an influx of 7,000 plus residents that would move into 3,200 units. We have 2 bus routes, 1 pharmacy that sometimes can take up to 4 hours to fill a prescription, 2 engines and 1 ladder company, 1 ambulance, and a police station that closes at 11 p.m. We have 16 streets that connect Bunker Hill Street to Medford Street, but you can only travel from Medford to Bunker on 2 of them. Both streets are in BHA. Polk Street is a designated one-way, and Monument is a 2-way. You have to drive the length of the town to get over to Main Street. We are not prepared for 3,200 units. Before you throw a dinner party, you have to clean up the house a little. Okay, really quick. There are 640 acres in 1 square mile. BHA sits on 27.7 acres. That's less than 1% of the land in the whole town. 3,200 units would increase the population by almost 44% into that 1% of land. That's a big, those are the numbers. Thanks. Oh, I got it.
So thank you for your comments. There was a specific question about funding, I think, but I wanted to address, I think there was a question about linkage, and whether that money could be directed. For those who are not clear what linkage funds are, is this funding that goes in from developers who are building commercial space. They pay into a common fund, and then the city votes, or members of the linkage fund, housing trust, vote on where that money will go. And it happened to be one of the trustees on the on the linkage fund voting. But I also wanted to let folks know about another set of funding that we will have a conversation about. It's the Community Preservation Act. That is funding that is $20 million a year that is coming after we passed question 5. And we will be setting up a community process and meeting here in Charlestown specifically to talk about how individuals, nonprofits, any organization can actually apply for this pot of money and the standards for that. So I wanted folks to know that that is also an available set of funding, 60% to go to affordable housing, and I think the last 20% to go to open space, and I know someone here is also very interested in historic preservation. So we will have a specific discussion about that money that we are going to annually have every year, another $20 million for the city of Boston, and we will have that discussion. But I wanted to put that out there as well. Did you have anything on the funding?
Linkage clearly is an opportunity to help with this project. There's linkage funds in virtually every redevelopment effort the BHA undertakes, so would expect some help, but I would have to point out, as has been pointed out, this is a project of over $1 billion, and at best we'll get a few $1 million in linkage. So it certainly will help, but it's certainly not a solution to the funding problem.
Did you have any comments on the funding? And then there was also comments on the wraparound services or the commitment of the Kennedy Center, 54 years strong, and we expect another 54 years, and that in the phase 1 that their community center was going to be removed of the original plan. So how do you want to make sure?
Kennedy Center, phase 1?
Well, we'll have to work to find replacement space in the interim. That's all we can do. That's where the first phase is where the BHA's existing maintenance and community building is. So something we'll have to plan for and try and accommodate the Kennedy Center as best as possible.
We will accommodate the Kennedy Center one way or the other. Trust me.
Thank you.
We'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Thanks for the factual answer.
Yep. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, right.
So up next we have Tom Mosel, Cy Mintz, Dan Kovacevic. Sorry, mispronounced that. They can go ahead and get in line. Where is everybody?
Who are you? My name's
Cy,
Tom.
were you going to get in? Were you going to testify?
Oh.
I said Tom, and then Dan.
Cy
Is
going
Dan?
first?
Yeah. Okay. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thanks. My name's Tom Mosel, and I live at 48 Monument Square. Just a couple of things. You hear the term One Charlestown a lot. We are One Charlestown already, and you can see that when you look at our Halloween night parade on Monument Square. That's who we are. We're already One Charlestown. I would say, without exception, everybody in Charlestown wants all those units to be rebuilt or developed, and at certainly high quality. Those aren't the issues. The issue is, how do you get there? And linkage was cited several times, and I can't emphasize that enough. The BHA's got a lot of other properties in the city. They could use those sites to help with the market rate units to pay for the units in Charlestown. We're exceedingly crowded here. The proposal for this was, and you can go to, I think it's 102.129. All the data I'm going to cite is on there. But the proposal, as it was the last time, the density was 5 times the density of New York City. I mean, the rates there are just absolutely crazy. The other thing is public safety. How hard is it to get a fire truck or an EMT truck in and out of Charlestown at rush hour? That Bunker Hill fire that we had last year, had that occurred with this development as proposed, there's no place for the trucks to go. And the cars can't get out of the way because there's no room on the bridges. So that's a public safety issue that has not been addressed that absolutely has to be before we go any farther. And then the last thing is, as we've talked in the past several months, 1,100 units have gone up within about 100 yards of Charlestown in the north end. There's 4 towers with 1,100 units. And then there's 657 hotel rooms that are going to be coming online in the next year. And those 657 hotel rooms have to be serviced by employees, so that's going to be another several hundred cars. So, these issues have not been addressed, and it's a public safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody at this juncture is contemplating 3,200 units. I think we've heard loud and clear from the community that that is excessive. Whatever is proposed in the hopefully not too distant future will not be anywhere near that number. We've already looked at how we might be able to de-densify the project, but 3,200 is clearly something that's not acceptable to this neighborhood.
Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Joe? Oh, Cy.
My name is Cy Mintz, and I live at 5 Putnam Street. I'm a Toonie, since I've only lived here since September of last year. I've been involved, as you know, in helping the community develop an alternative plan. But I need to say a couple things about that. That process was one where we had 17 community meetings all over Charlestown in order to solicit the comments and concerns of all kinds of residents, whether they're residents that live in Bunker Hill, as much as possible that we could talk to, as well as residents in Charles Newtown and in every neighborhood that we could visit. And I've learned a lot in the process. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm very familiar with Corcoran Jennison since I had the opportunity of working for Joe's father. I was one of the architects for Harbor Point. And in addition to that, I've done several public housing projects in Boston, so I've had the opportunity of also working with the BHA. And I need to say that that's what this process is really all about. Okay, I'm not trying to, I'm an architect and a city planner, but I have no interest and no intention of doing that here. I'm a volunteer like many of you. And the objective here is to get this development to move forward and to do it in a process that involves the public agencies as well as the community and certainly the residents that live there. And that's been my objective from the beginning, and it continues as long as I'm invited to participate. Thank you.
I'm Dan Kovacevic. I live in Prescott Street near City Square. I have been sitting down with Corcoran Jennison since the very beginnings of this project, when we were brought in, a number of community residents, members of the Preservation Society and Historic Society, brought in to talk about the historic aspects of the site. And that process evolved into talking about the development itself in the early stages. The concern we have of the density now being said here that we're going to be addressing that, the concern that the density of the community and the density of this new development has to be much closer together in order for it to be integrated into the community. The other part of it is, as others have spoken, is servicing that area with sufficient public transportation and access to services that don't exist today. And with the increased density, even, clearly, you're replacing 1,100 units of affordable housing, but you've got to generate additional housing in order to make that work. And so that process is going to require additional public transportation and city services. And that needs to be part of the mix. The commitment from the city and the MBTA has to be on the table as the process moves forward. You can't do it and then expect them to come in later, because they don't. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Kelly Tucker? If you... Okay. Tom Cunha? and Marion Callahan.
Don't worry, Joe, I'll be nice. No, I'll be nice. Lydia, I thought this was a done deal. I apologize. I know it's not, so I won't take up that much time. Just a few questions to you, Mr. McGonigal.
Yep.
There were 280 elderly people you said that reside there. Is that correct? I apologize.
I'm not sure it's quite that many. It's
Okay.
200, I can't remember the precise number.
I think you said 180,
so
so
180
one
going
building
back, you
dedicated,
stated.
180.
180, I think, is in the elderly designated building.
Okay.
Yep.
So what will happen to the rest of them? Will they be dispersed? Because I thought at first there were 300 about, but maybe I'm wrong, but in the numbers, and I just have a concern. Are they going to be dispersed over the rest of the property, or how's that going to work? If there's 300?
No. Some, I suspect, will want to go to, want to relocate to our, some of our elderly disabled communities.
Okay.
For
And if
example,
they don't?
we'll find a place for
Okay.
them. I mean,
All
we have General Warren here in Charlestown,
Mhm.
Estonia close by in the north end.
Okay.
You know, we'll accommodate them,
Pretty
obviously.
full, but that's all right. I'm
They are
not being
very full.
disrespectful to you,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're pretty full. I know
Yeah,
I'm pretty on top
yeah,
of that. I admire you because I think that you try to bring people up and not put them down.
Thank you.
Because, you know, they're low income or whatever, and I respect you for that.
Thank you.
And Joe, my question to you is, under the lease in that, under the 99-year lease, so the 1,100 will stay there during that time, is that part of the agreement too, in the lease agreement? Use a lease in the space, but there's 1,100 units going back, is that part of the 99-year lease?
The lease and other legal documents will ensure that all the deeply affordable units that are on the site remain deeply affordable for 99 years. And that is by Massachusetts law, the longest I can make it requirement. But I suspect somebody is going to reinvent whatever it is we do before that 99 years is up. Great-grandchildren, perhaps. But, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
My
you.
other question to you,
Yep.
in funding the project, is it you and the developer that is going to fund it fully? Are you getting tax credits this time and bonds? Or are you funding it? Because before, it was stated that you and SunCal were partnering and funding the whole project, but then there was an article that stated you were getting tax credits and bonds. Just a question.
Well,
because I don't want you to pull back on an answer.
No, there'll be one building in the first phase that would be funded with tax credits, 4% tax credits.
Mm-hmm.
The plan is the rest of it is funded through the private marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Which is you and the developer. And
Well,
others?
and investors to be brought in as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you answered my question. When it's clear and concise, I'll come back to you, Joe. I like clear and concise.
I don't blame you. So do I.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tommy Cuna, and I've been a resident of Charlestown for 65 years. I'm only 65, so don't add the years to me because
So you haven't
of
lived
my
in Charlestown
beard.
your whole life yet.
So I've lived in Charlestown my whole life, which is what Bill wanted me to say, but I want to tell everybody how old I am now. So when they see me walking the streets, they know I'm not unemployed. I have a couple of comments and a question. My comment is I'm really concerned about, when I was growing up in Charlestown, the housing development was always told to me to be, was built essentially for returning veterans from both World War II and the Korean War. And there was always a place for them to find. I have a lot of family who live down there and some lifelong friends whose parents got married and moved in because they were veterans. My concern is that I'm hearing numbers of 1,100 this and another couple of another 1,000 or two for making the market work. I would like to see a guarantee that 100 of those homes, however, low income, moderate income, or whatever, be put aside for veterans and mainly Charlestown residents that no longer can afford to live in town. I've had some occasion to be over to the Pine Street Inn on quite a few Sundays and some other places, and I've seen my contemporaries, and even younger than me, at those places because they have no place to live. So we can't forget the people that made it special for us to live here. And I think I'd like to see it in the documents that whatever is an agreed upon amount, 100 or whatever, be put aside for veterans that have served the country. My other concern is changing the streetscape of the community. Right now, you can take a left on Medford Street and go all the way up to Bunker Hill Street, take a quick jog and be down on Main Street. I'm real concerned about those main streetscapes, which I consider to be a major fabric in our community, being changed to fit the development. I think the development should fit into the major streets now. There have been an awful lot of veteran squares on those places and things like that. And my other thought is that the people that have been honored in our community, their names should be on every building that has a veteran square there. Now let me get into my Charlestown Chairman's question. I've been involved in development since 1986 in this community. I've been the chairman of the council for 15 years. This is the biggest project this community in my development has ever seen. It's huge. It affects the whole community. I know people who live in the housing development are concerned about whether they're going to have a place to put their head at night, and is it going to be special more than what they have now, because they've been putting up with a lot. But there are other parts of our community that this is going to affect. It's going to bring at least another 3,000 cars on our streets. To what? Fire department, police department. But here's the problem that I have. If you're bringing families in to be part of our community, then where are those kids going to go to school? And some of that stuff is the city's problem, but a lot of it's in other aspects of the country. The developers build those fire departments as part of the development, police departments as part of that, or schooling. It's a real concern that this percentage of community dramatically affects the rest of the community. Now, I grew up, like I said, in Charlestown with family and friends, and I've got friends who still live down there. And my concern is that we don't have a split because of this development. There's a lot of things that cause splits. And one of them shouldn't be that people get good, adequate housing, and it shouldn't be because we built those housing, I can't get to the other side of Bunker Hill Street unless I leave at 4:30 in the morning. So that has to be part of the planning, and it has to be part of the planning from up top. And why is it taking so long? 2015, I brought this to the Community Council. It's 2018, and we're talking 2019 before we put it in the ground. That's an awful lot of time.
I know.
It's got to come from above.
Tom.
Okay?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tommy.
Marion?
Good evening to all my neighbors. Thanks to city councilors for being here tonight. So, I have a question for Joe Cochran. Will there be housing for middle-class families from Charlestown who so desperately need an affordable place to live in the town?
It's really tough to do something specific for middle-income families.
Excuse me?
It's very tough to do something specifically for middle-income families. So you know, we're going to have market rate apartments, and that'll be, you know, there'll be a lot of different people who can live in the market rate apartments too. But specifically, the middle-income stuff is tough to do financially. People having trouble do it all over the city, and it's a problem.
I don't understand that. Like, so are you going to have low income?
We're going to have low income, the public housing residents, yeah.
So the middle class are like nothing.
Well, the middle class apartments, people who are middle class live in apartments too. You know, the incomes,
Exactly,
they live in
but-
apartment, live in a range. So there's by nature middle income people who live in apartment complexes.
Right. So why aren't they included?
Well, they are. But they are. They'll be included in the whole mix of it.
So you are going to have middle class.
There'll be some people who'll be
Affordable
considered
housing,
who'll
or
be considered middle class who live in regular apartments.
Because it just seems like it goes low income and something that...
Well, within the market, there
can't
were people,
afford.
there's a whole range of incomes that live in a market rate apartment. It isn't all kind of like rich people. You know, so there'll be a mixture of incomes, and they'll range all across the board who will live in the market rate apartments.
Right. Okay, that's my question. Thank you very much.
Good question. Just to follow up on some of our questions, a lot of the reason why people are looking at then the rent-to-own or opportunities is because that they feel that there will be a pathway for some of the middle class to be able to get in there. Because affordable, really, the word itself is a lot of people don't even find that to be make much sense to many people. So just to make sure that we're planning for a development that is including all income levels, not just the extremes, do we have your commitment to that?
Well, yes. I mean, I think by definition, a market rate apartment is affordable to a whole range of people and a whole range of incomes.
So we'll have some lower market rate, we'll have some luxury, we'll have all of these different kinds of ranges within market rate?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We have Cyrus Tehrani, Diane Valley, and Dan Haska.
All right, so I want to I'm coming at this from a young person's perspective. I'm a young homeowner in Boston and an advocate for more housing at every level in Boston. So to help answer that question, these 2,100 or whatever end up the market rate housing is going to open up housing across the city for people to live in to make those middle income housing more affordable. So the additional market rate housing supply benefits everyone. So there are going to be young people living in that like me, they would be able to live in those units. But I did want to say, get to my testimony, is I'm here to advocate for 3 primary goals to be reached by the One Charlestown Project. The first is to advocate for the reconstruction of all 1,100 affordable apartments in the Bunker Hill apartments. The city should take every step possible to safely house these residents during construction, as well as to mitigate any displacement of current residents after the project is completed. And this might not be popular, but my second thing is to advocate for the highest density possible for market rate housing to be built on the site. This project provides an opportunity for the city to upzone and build significant amount of housing in a wealthier neighborhood, which would make a real difference in outlying neighborhoods like East Boston and Dorchester that are suffering from the pressures of displacement and gentrification. People want to live in Charlestown. The choice is either to build homes for them to live in or to allow housing costs in Charlestown to keep skyrocketing and force these people to look towards more affordable neighborhoods and displacing current residents in East Boston and Dorchester. People don't choose to become gentrifiers. People become gentrifiers when we don't build enough housing in places, the most desirable places to live in. I came here with another homeowner, my brother, who's in Charlestown. He lives here in Charlestown. He owns a 1-bedroom. He lives there with his wife. He wants to be able to afford a bigger, larger place in Charlestown. We need to be building more market rate affordable housing. My generation has this stigma that we're transient. Well, we're transient because we can't afford to live here. We get married, we have kids, but we're not able to stay here. We would love to stay here and to live here. I know, but this supply helps everyone,
right.
and that's what we need.
All right, let him finish. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Diane Valley, and I just want to thank everybody for being here in Charlestown and caring so much. We held 19 meetings throughout the community to try to come up with a concern so that we could come up with an alternative plan. And I think that all the people here are evidence that we care, that we want to do something that's great for the people who live in the community development and also around it, because we are all affected. So one of the things that I would say is the density became an overarching issue, that we couldn't tolerate 3,200 units. We didn't understand how we got from 2,400 to 3,200 units. and that we got a high-rise district. So that's one thing that I'd like to make sure that we address. The other one that I really think is important is the public financing. We've been told that we're an experiment, that we are the first experiment, even though we're the largest in all of New England, that we will have no public financing. And then in light of the Globe article that Seaport got $18 billion in public financing, seems like we should have something that would help us to build a community that's really worthwhile. And the third one is today in the paper, there is an article about the Little Mystic Channel, that lease is coming up. And I would like the developers, the community, and the city to really take a look and see if we can add some extra land to this so that we can live together as a great community that we all want to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Don Hoska. I've been a Charlestown resident for about 39 years. I can't speak for 2 minutes. This book can tell you a lot in 2 hours. The federal government gave us 7 minutes to speak on behalf of the Charlestown community for the Charles River Crossing Bridge, now known as the Bunker Hill Bridge. That bridge is part of the historic battle site of Bunker Hill. The BHA and BPDA One Charlestown housing proposal is in great jeopardy of delay due to the lack of study and proper implementation of procedures numerous to federal historic preservation laws and historic preservation restoration programs, specifically Section 106 regulations and American Battlefield Protection Act of 1996, Title 54 of the U.S. Code, as well as the public inclusion of Massachusetts National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers to review this proposal. Before any call of RFP for the BPDA, both city agencies ignored any call for historic preservation investigation or restoration process on this historic battlefield. This is not named in honor of the battlefield. The land between Polk Street and Monument Street was actually the hottest killing zone. Everyone believes that it happened up at the monument. It's not true. Read the book. Numerous laws of state and federal procedure process are in place for this type of development process. Hearing and proposal designs were held a year before the process was qualified with BHA residents, which completely ignored Charlestown historic neighborhoods, organizations, veteran groups, and especially the Charlestown Neighborhood Council community process of open hearings, which has been developed over the last 30 years. The Big Dig process is an example, in fact, for other federal projects that we have held here in Charlestown. This Bunker Hill development is recognized nationally as historic, federally protected battleground property, and the process for design and discovery should be proper, transparent, and follow the guidelines for historic preservation and contemporary interpretive park restoration, which could include everyone. Open space is partial, if not 50% of this particular project, which could be used on the outside if properly designed with row housing. Charlestown is filled with row housing. I could go on and on. I have at least 8 minutes of comments on this particular issue. But I ask one question: when I might expect the National Park's Historic Battlefield Preservation Report to be given to the public so that they can, so any designer can say, this is where the battle happened, this is where the British stood, this is where the British died, this is where we want to put row housing, this is where we want to put regular housing. I proposed a 22-story project last June 22nd along, I-93 so that you could unite public housing and education and still have the historic battlefield. I think this process is flawed. It's not transparent at all. It hasn't included Charlestown residents or Historical Society. Charlestown is the oldest community of Massachusetts Bay. It is the beginning of the U.S. Army. First Army Corps of Engineers happened here. And yet men died on this site.
Thank you for your testimony, and just again to repeat what I had stated earlier, that there will be a talk, we'll have a community gathering about the Community Preservation Act and specific dollars that we will be able to allocate or apply for in order to protect our very sacred history. So thank you very much, and I certainly will be inviting you to that. I have a name I can barely read. I have two more people, and then unless someone else wanted to sign up, we were going to have some closing remarks. I think it's Katie, and then I also have Arthur. If I'm at 12 Monument Square, if this is the address I can read barely, this Kate, maybe they're gone. Okay, go ahead, Arthur.
Arthur Kolpak from Monument Avenue. I'll never be a townie, but I've lived here for 40 years. I've lived in the city of Boston for 47 years. I live here because I hate cars. I can walk every place.
Could you, Arthur, could you speak up a little bit more and just thank you.
Anyhow, I'm going to be quick. Basically, it's density and quality of life. And what I would like to see is infrastructure, and I want to know about the infrastructure before the project starts. Dan did a great job. Diane Valley did a great job. Eric did a great job. I love Charlestown. I want to stay here. I brought up 3 kids and 2 dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think there was some final comments that, Jennifer, did you want to say something? Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? Okay. Go ahead. You too? Okay. Huh?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Edward. I'm a 8-year resident of the Charlestown BHA development. I'm a mom, and I'm also the treasurer for the Charlestown Residents Alliance. But at this moment, right now I just speak as a concerned resident of the BHA. I appreciate everyone's concerns as well as I want to say objection to the redevelopment. But as a current resident, I see it's more an objection because of so much of the circumstances. It's not just livable, it's literally affecting our health. And I'm just, appealing to everyone as one human being to another, not just as a Charlestown resident, that I feel that should be more addressed as opposed to some of the objections and the concerns as far as like a density. Those are things that we can always come to a compromise on, but to a person's health, living in a mold or having all these things literally in your environment that is breaking you down day by day, it's heartbreaking, and hopefully we can come to a conclusion and a compromise sooner rather than later. Because again, some of our residents may not have a tomorrow because of their living conditions today. So thank you for your time and moment. Have a good night.
So folks are, this is great. So you said you wanted to sign up. Mai Tai, did you want to go get behind him? And then did you want to get behind Mai Tai?
Hi, Kelly. So hi, everyone. My name is John Terrani. I'm actually Cyrus's older brother. But I've recently moved to Charlestown. 2015, I bought a condominium on Salem Street. I've lived in Boston over the last 10 years in various areas, Allston for quite a number of years, the North End for quite a number of years. I moved to Lowell for a little while and then came back. I came back because I love Boston. I love this city, and I never want to leave this city, right? There's so much that it has to offer to everyone, ranging from ages. Myself, as a young person, I have a wife, and I want to have a family, and I'd like to raise a family here. I think that's actually a pretty big problem that the city as a whole has, is that people that are of my age and wanting to start families leave, and they have families in other towns. People go to Winchester, people go to Bedford, people go to Lexington, people go to Stoneham, they go anywhere, right? Because they can't raise families here. Why can't they raise families here? Because housing prices have skyrocketed. I mean, I look at what I paid for my place in 2015 to if I were to go move, I probably couldn't buy my place now, right? And so what does that leave me to do? I got to go to Marlboro, or I got to go to somewhere else, right? But why is that housing pricing just skyrocketing? Why are we becoming New York City? Because there's not enough inventory, and it's not even, I know this is supposed to be about One Charlestown, but it's kind of about the entire Boston market. And there's nowhere for people to go to just buy something that's of a reasonable price. And I understand why there's so many objections to the issues related to increased housing here, because I see it every day. When I try to come home from work, you come into Sullivan Square, you want to go over the bridge into the north end, that's insane. In the morning when you come down Main Street, there's ridiculous traffic. I totally understand that. And so there has to be some sort of issue, approaches to adjusting infrastructure issues, but we also have to solve the housing problem too for people that want to stay here. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay here if I want to have a family. I'm in a one-bedroom right now. I can't really have a kid unless I put them in my living room. And if that happens, well, then I have to move, and I don't want to move. And so I think that's something that everyone should be considering too, is that I haven't lived here for 40 years. Maybe I would like to, though. So that's just one thing to keep in mind.
Hello, my name is Mayate Davis. I'm the Vice President of the CRA. I've been living in Charlestown for almost 6.5 years. And I don't have the best apartment, but I'm grateful for what I do have. I'm blessed to even be in the predicament that I'm here. Boston Housing has given me an opportunity to go to school. I'm in the process of becoming a lawyer one day. So, I owe a lot of stuff to the BHA and to even Corcoran for helping me, decided me to make that movement just for seeing how housing works. And I even quit my job because I was an IT, I was a computer technician, to even now do a project management. So just learning a lot of stuff about housing and all that type of stuff. I'm just like, I'm ready for them to knock those buildings down and just to build up and literally become one Charlestown. Because we have our event Unity Day, and we have the residents here, but there's certain people I haven't seen on the other side even come to our development. So I really want to be one Charlestown, and that's it.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks for you guys doing this. I'll be honest, my name's Jeff Fian, I live over on Pearl Street. I thought I was coming here tonight to hear a plan. The reality is, I wouldn't touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. There is no plan. I don't know how many units there are. I don't know what it's going to cost. I don't know where it's going to go. I haven't heard that Boston Water's involved. I haven't heard that Boston Power's involved. I haven't heard the MBTA's involved. I haven't heard anything that makes this thing make sense from the word go. And I honestly don't doubt for a second that there are 1,110 units that people are not happy with, that most likely are making them sick, that life isn't good. This is like big dig times 10. There's no disrespect. And I understand this is a government, project. There's no, I haven't found the leadership here yet. I haven't found a plan. I haven't found anything. Where's the data? I'm looking for an impact study. I'm looking for anything, but you can't do an impact study because we don't know how many rooms there's going to be. Well, okay, what's the retail? We don't know what the retail is going to be. I haven't heard yet even somebody come up saying, well, it's all rental. Can one person rent 5 of these and then just start jacking up the rent so that it's never going to be? What's the plan? Like, are there going to be more of these meetings to bring this thing out? Because sticking a shovel in the ground in 19, this isn't about ducks in a row. You got a duck, an elephant, a panda, I don't. But thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I don't know if you want to clarify again.
Ducks and pandas?
Ducks and pandas, but also process, which is I think a lot of what this hearing was about, process and how we got here. But also we have some deadlines about when they're designated, and then I believe after that the planning does begin, and the open process of that planning, and how a lot of your questions will be answered in that process as well. So, did I summarize that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, we're in an Article 80 process, which started in 2016. We had a delay because we had to change our partner. So we haven't been out in the community for several months. But once we go through this redesignation process, we'll be back at it again. And there is a plan. So we have the plan, it's on the BPDA website. The plan on the website isn't the plan we're going to do. There's been comments by the community. There's been comments by city departments. We've been scoped, and we're going to respond to that scope with a new plan as soon as we're redesignated. Yes. When? My best guess is if we get a...
Could you repeat the question, or I'll say it? She asked when the new plan would be. If designated, when would the plan be available?
Well, I mean, if we're getting back on track again in May officially, it might take us 3 months to develop the new plan after that. All right? Pardon me? Yes, yes, yeah. I mean, we're still putting together all the comments we've heard on the plan.
I like the finances. Clear, concise, factual, that works.
Yes, indeed.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming, sticking it out. We had, I think, a really good hearing, one of many conversations to be had on this process. I want to thank especially the CRA and the folks from BHA for coming out and sticking out here and really shedding perspectives of all different sides. Thank you so much for coming, testifying, and being here. Thank you so much, Anissa, for coming and staying, and to Michelle, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Wu, and to Councilor Presley, who have come here and shared this time here in this wonderful area of Boston, also known as Charlestown. Thank you so much, and so I will officially close out the hearing. Thank you.